Apple has decided to leave a 32-inch gap in its display lineup, and this might be the monitor that fills it affordably. Hi, it's Simon. This is the Miro Pro display. 32 inches, true 6K, full aluminium, glossy glass, one cable to your Mac. It's $1,300. Apple's standard studio display is 27 inches, 5K, and 60 Hz. For $1,600. The new Studio Display XDR version is XDR in 120 Hz and is still 27 inches, but it starts at $3,300. Neither of those are 32 inches, and both of them are a little spenny. So, what do you actually lose by choosing something like this instead? Or are you just gaining in your pocket and on your desk? There's one spec that might put you off, admittedly, but we'll get to that because I don't think it's a deal breaker. Now listen, my search for the perfect Mac monitor has been this elusive fight that I've had for years. You find 120 Hz refresh rate, you lose any kind of nice design. You get 32 inches and then you lose that refresh rate. You find both and the price becomes unbearably high. Goodbye Pro Display XDR. Nobody seems to put the right balance together in the right place. Well, this could be a sweet spot for many, and it's not simply a copy. It's a homage, sure, but it's something good in its own right. Let's take a look. A quick disclosure while I get this open. Click Clack supplied this early test unit and is paying to sponsor the video, but I went to them because I wanted to test it on the agreement that I could say exactly what I think. They're paying for the video, but not the verdict. And well, if that wasn't allowed, this wouldn't be up. First of all, the packaging looks promising. So box open, standard charging cable, VESA mount adapter included, very nice indeed. First impressions, this is tidy. The chassis and the included stand are both CNC aluminium and it feels properly solid. The moment of truth. Love it. As you can see, the front is glossy. This is a Retina class panel with anti-reflective glass. Glossy is my preference every time. And then there's this logo. Now, I don't know, it's smaller than I thought it would be. They've printed, however, a reasonably large Miro wordmark right across it. And having your own name shouted across the back of an otherwise restrained monitor is, well, a fair choice for a brand, sure, but for me, I think this just, well, it kind of misses the aesthetic balance. We're looking for something here that feels super premium. When Apple do it, obviously they're just using the Apple logo, which is an image mark, not a word mark. So I would love to see them work out their image mark and just simplify it. Maybe place it on here or just on the middle of the monitor so it feels a little bit cleaner. That would be lovely. Now on the finish of the actual aluminium, it's super clean. This isn't a single piece of aluminium that you'll find with Apple. You can see the join round here and it's pretty damn accurate. I'm finding on this early test model, it's flush at the back here and it's slightly protruding on the left side. Interestingly, on my unit, I have this little bit of give here, like I can press the back panel and see it move and it slightly protrudes. So this is an early test model. I'm sure they'll fix that for the final versions. But yeah, that's the only thing I'm noticing. Beyond that though, oh my word, the finish, the cleanness, the aluminium, it's better than a lot of monitors you'll find. We'll talk about whether this is a copy or not later. Let's take a look in the little box of extras. All right, well, one thing I'll say, the remote is really nice quality. Also aluminium, so very nice. A beautifully machined and very good looking remote that allows you to change settings without groping around the back like a tech archaeologist. Probably also this means that you can plug in other stuff and switch between it. Would be interesting to try. So for me, maybe logo aside, this is the most grown-up Apple style monitor that I've taken a look at out of the box, and it doesn't need Apple money to feel premium, but we now need to test it. Oh, and by the way, if the algorithm has been feeding you these kind of videos from me for a while and you've never actually subscribed, it's worth a click. Next, what you're actually paying for. Let's turn it on. So it's one cable, and I like that, obviously. The upstream USB-C connection carries the 6K picture and the HDR support and up to 96 watts of power support, so your MacBook gets picture and charging down that single cable. 4 more USB-C ports handle keyboards and mice if you want them, but to be honest, I'm just Bluetoothing, you don't need it. Though they are USB 2.0 rather than fast drive connection, so you're not getting the Thunderbolt support you might get on Mac. There's no HDMI or headphone jack, and that won't suit everyone. There are other models out there that look a bit like this that do that, but I personally prefer the tidy back, and most things go into a dock for me anyway. One side note, the Miro isn't tied to Mac. I think a PC with a compatible USB-C or DisplayPort output can use this too, although the resolution and refresh rate will depend on what that computer supports. And one clever touch, the firmware is upgradable. There is an ability to update firmware natively via the connection to your Mac in the monitor. We'll have to confirm that, but that's really good because it means that they've built in protection, essentially, as Mac software updates, that this can also be kept relevant. Very good. So this really is true 6K, 6144 by 3456 at 224 pixels per inch. Color coverage is 98% of the DCI-P3 and 99% of Adobe RGB range, and this is in Adobe RGB right now. And it's factory calibrated under the average Delta E under 2 with the report. I like blah, blah, blah. Look, the report is in the box, and for the people who don't talk blurbs, all that essentially means is that this is serious territory for editing photos and video. It's not full pro color screen, but it's, for most people, it's what a consumer monitor should have, and it does it well. Now, the remote is lovely, nicely made, very similar to the Apple one. However, it's nice to turn the monitor on and off with, and it does it. It's a little slow, but it's solid. If we then press the monitor, that is not a great interface, is it? I mean, it's a bit disappointing. I've always found this with monitors though, they look terrible and it doesn't make sense. You're like, the arrows are in the wrong place, that the up and down doesn't work on this view. I can select through with OK, and then I can go up and down, and then there's OK and back, and it is a bit weird. So whilst this looks good, they need to work on the menu interface, but then that's true of most monitors I know, and the fact that it's got a remote to turn it on and off is a good thing. What I do like, however, is that this thing is turned on simply by plugging it in. So if I stick this into it, it connects. Pretty simple. So you don't have a means to turn it off as with other monitors on it. I'd like to have seen that. Then again, that's kind of how the Studio Display works, I think, but overall, the main thing you would do is shut your Mac, unplug, and this is the whole idea, isn't it, of a single cable life. You just plug in, go. But now the real catch, I promised. It's 60 Hertz refresh rate. The same as that old M1 Mac, so that's not a problem. But it's not 120 Hertz like the brand new Macs. But is that a problem? I know there'll be people in the comments shouting about it, but I don't know if it is. Brightness is 500 nits in normal use. That's only 100 nits less than the standard Studio Display. And this is 32 inches and it's less money. And it's 750 nits with HDR enabled. And well, if you look closely when you're scrolling quickly beside a 120 Hertz MacBook, yes, you can tell the difference. I just don't find it a deal breaker. I'm not a gamer. I'm looking at a huge screen, so for the most part, I'm not going to see loads of stuff scrolling. It's fine for video playback. And in Lightroom, Final Cut, a browser and 40 tabs, I stop noticing it. So if your day is competitive gaming, sure, buy something else. If you really love that super smooth scroll you get on your MacBook, sure, buy something else. But honestly, 60 Hertz is all I've ever had on a large monitor, and for the money and the resolution you're getting at where it matters, this just doesn't matter to me. But let me know in the comments what you feel. It's still very hard to find something that looks this good or costs the right amount at 120 Hertz. I know you'll mention them in the comments, I know. Right, a quick pause before I give you my verdict on how this stacks up against a Studio Display from Apple, because you might have noticed these sexy old wallpapers, and I'm pretty proud that I made them myself. These are my minimal monthly calendar wallpapers, clean gradients and solid exports of 6K, 5K MacBook and iPad resolutions. So on this panel, they pin up rather sharply. There is now an interactive web version too. It changes through the months and it can even pull in your calendar onto your desktop. It uses the Clash Mac app, which is free to download. You combine it with these, and if you want to, you can also get those original files with the web version. So go check it out and watch my recent video if you want to see how I turned my desktop into an interactive personal dashboard. There are two Apple comparisons here, and I think the cheaper one is more useful. Apple's standard studio display starts at $1,600. It's 27 inches, 5K and 60 Hertz with 600 nits of brightness. That's really the nits and the brightness that are different. Admittedly, you do get Thunderbolt connection there where you don't hear, but it is more and you're not getting this amount of space. And of course, Apple does give you your built-in camera, speakers, microphone, faster accessory ports, and a very polished Mac experience. The Miro, however, is $300 less. And many people, including me, want those 32 inches, and those don't exist anymore. So yes, you do lose the built-in webcam. I use my Insta360 Link 2, and it's fantastic, and it follows me around the room. So if you want to mount your own webcam, that's a reason to buy this, and you could get the webcam for free. And the faster downstream ports, sure, you're losing those too, but I also use my monitor with a hub. This Anchor hub is fantastic, so that solved that. What you do gain though is 32 inches and a lot more desktop space. And I have to say, this format is really hard to go back from. Not only that, you could technically buy two of these for less than one Studio Display XDR and have two 32-inch 6K panels next to each other. But then of course, there's the Studio Display XDR, which I had in the studio recently. Apple retired its old 32-inch 6K equivalent to this, the Pro Display XDR, and replaced it with that 27-inch 5K mini LED 120 Hz, up to 2000 nits of peak HDR brightness beast. It's got Thunderbolt 5, cameras and speakers. That, my friends, is a spec. Oh, and it starts at $3,300. So it's a spec you pay for. So yes, that is a better display for HDR work. It's brighter, faster, and I do think the contrast is far, far better. There's no argument. But of course, it's $2,000 more than the Miro with a smaller panel and fewer pixels, and that budget's just not for everyone. Now, the other reasonably fair objection to this is it's too like the Studio Display in its design. People might start saying, it's a copy, I'm not paying for a copy. Don't judge copies against quality, is all I would say. The Apple monolith just has that influence on their market, and in my eye, good design is good design. Copy doesn't necessarily mean bad. At £1,300 for a 6K 32-inch monitor made of aluminium, just remember that. Anyway, let's have the argument in the comments. It's easy for me to say, but I hope I found a balanced argument here. So, is the Miro Pro display worth it? If you want Apple's camera, speakers, and seamless integration, the standard Studio Display is the closer rival and maybe worth the extra $300. If you need reference grade HDR or 120 Hz smoothness, the XDR is in another class. But if you want a 32-inch 6K panel for normal creative work, business work that just fits the Apple aesthetic beautifully, this is the most convincing alternative that I've used yet for the price. It isn't perfect, but it doesn't need to be. It fills the 32-inch space Apple walked away from at a price far more people can reach. So sort out that back panel logo, Miro, and maybe the menu interface from that remote, and you've got something very special. A 6K panel won't fix the notifications, 12 open windows, and 400 files sitting on it though. So I recommend you watch this video next for the exact setup I used to make my Mac feel clean and calm. Minimal monthly wallpapers are linked below. Get subscribed if you haven't, and I'll see you there.